A man steps into a hotel lobby he has never visited before. The marble floor is unfamiliar. The receptionist is a stranger. A suitcase rolls across the room somewhere behind him. Then something strange happens. For a brief moment, he becomes certain that he has lived this exact scene before. Not something similar. Not something that reminds him of another memory. This moment. The angle of the light, the sound of the suitcase, the position of the people standing nearby. Everything feels impossibly familiar. Then the feeling disappears. A few seconds later, he knows it makes no sense. He has never been here. Yet for those few seconds, the certainty felt real. Why? Why can an entirely new experience sometimes feel like a memory? The phenomenon is so common that most people encounter it at least once in their lives. Some experience it only a handful of times. Others encounter it regularly. The French gave it a name centuries ago. Déjà vu. Already seen. The phrase sounds simple. The experience does not. For generations, people struggled to explain it. Some believed it was evidence of past lives. Others thought it might be a glimpse into the future. Some imagined hidden memories from forgotten dreams. The experience felt too strange to belong to ordinary reality. The problem was that scientists faced an unusual obstacle. Déjà vu is difficult to study because it arrives without warning. You cannot schedule it. You cannot summon it on command. A researcher cannot simply tell a volunteer to experience it at 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. The feeling appears unexpectedly and disappears just as quickly. For a long time, that made it one of the most frustrating mysteries in psychology. Yet clues began appearing in unexpected places. One of them emerged inside hospitals. Neurologists treating patients with temporal lobe epilepsy noticed something peculiar. Some patients reported intense episodes of déjà vu immediately before a seizure. The feeling could be so strong that they became convinced they had lived entire moments before. Then the seizure would begin. The connection fascinated researchers. If unusual activity in the brain could create déjà vu, perhaps the experience was not supernatural at all. Perhaps it was biological. The question became more urgent in the 20th century when neurosurgeons began performing procedures on awake patients. In some operations, doctors gently stimulated specific regions of the brain with small electrical currents. Patients remained conscious throughout the procedure. When certain areas near the temporal lobe were stimulated, something remarkable sometimes happened. Patients suddenly reported vivid feelings of familiarity. A room they had never seen before felt known. A conversation seemed remembered. The feeling appeared from nowhere, then vanished again. The experience looked less like a message from another world and more like a signal generated inside the brain itself. That seemed like progress. But it created a new mystery. What exactly was the brain doing? One popular theory focused on memory. Perhaps the brain accidentally places a brand new experience into the memory system before it fully processes the present moment. Imagine receiving a letter and accidentally filing it before reading it. A few seconds later, when you finally read the letter, it feels familiar because your brain has already stored it. The idea sounds plausible. The problem is that evidence for it remained incomplete. Other researchers proposed a different explanation. Maybe déjà vu happens when two streams of information arrive slightly out of sync. The brain processes one version of an experience a fraction of a second before another. When the second version arrives, it feels strangely familiar because part of the brain has technically encountered it already. Again, the idea was clever. Again, it failed to explain everything. The mystery remained. Then, scientists noticed something else. Déjà vu occurs most often in healthy young adults. It tends to become less common with age. That pattern was surprising. If déjà vu were simply a malfunction, we might expect it to increase as the brain grows older. Instead, it appears most frequently in brains that are operating at their peak. The experience began to look less like a defect and more like a side effect of something useful. To understand what that useful thing might be, imagine walking through a city. You approach an intersection. Long before you reach it, your brain is already making predictions. The light will stay green, the person ahead will continue walking, the parked car will remain parked. You are not consciously thinking these thoughts. The brain is constantly generating them beneath awareness. In fact, modern neuroscience increasingly suggests that prediction may be one of the brain's most important jobs. The world arrives too quickly to process from scratch every second. Instead, the brain continuously builds expectations about what comes next. Most of the time, those predictions are invisible. Reality matches them. The system runs quietly in the background. But what happens when something goes slightly wrong? What happens when a prediction becomes unusually strong? Or when the brain accidentally mistakes a successful prediction for a memory? Some researchers believe this may be the key to déjà vu. The feeling may not be a memory at all. It may be the sensation of a prediction being confused with familiarity. For a brief instant, the brain experiences something it expected to happen. Instead of recognizing the event as a successful prediction, part of the system labels it as something remembered. The result feels extraordinary, not because the moment is familiar, because the brain believes it is. This idea explains several strange features of déjà vu. The feeling is usually brief. It rarely contains specific details. People often know, even while experiencing it, that something is wrong. The familiarity feels real. The explanation does not. The brain appears to be detecting a mismatch. A prediction system and a memory system momentarily disagree. Researchers found support for this idea in laboratory experiments designed to create artificial feelings of familiarity. Participants were shown environments that shared hidden structures with places they had seen before. The details were different, but the underlying patterns were similar. Again and again, people reported feelings resembling déjà vu, not because they had visited the location before, because part of their brain recognized the structure beneath it. The system detected familiarity without understanding its source. The result was a feeling remarkably close to the real phenomenon. This leads to an intriguing possibility. Perhaps déjà vu is not evidence that memory is failing. Perhaps it is evidence that prediction is working. The experience may be a glimpse behind the curtain. Most of the time, the machinery remains hidden. You never notice how many expectations your brain generates every second. You only see the finished result. Déjà vu may be one of the rare moments when the machinery becomes visible. A tiny crack opens. For a second or two, you catch the brain in the act of anticipating reality. That possibility transforms the experience. What feels like a mysterious message from the past may actually be a side effect of the mind's attempt to navigate the future. The brain is not merely recording the world. It is constantly preparing for it, and occasionally, those preparations become visible. Which brings us back to the man standing in the hotel lobby. The suitcase still rolls across the floor. The receptionist still smiles. Nothing about the room has changed. Yet for a few impossible seconds, the moment felt remembered. Not because he had lived it before, not because he had visited that place in another life, but perhaps because his brain had spent millions of years evolving to predict what comes next. And for one brief instant, the line between prediction and memory became blurred. The feeling vanished. The mystery remained. But the next time an unfamiliar moment suddenly feels familiar, you may notice something hidden inside the experience. Not a message from the past, a glimpse of the machinery that is quietly building your future before it arrives.